long since you guys have seen me. I think this is my first Facebook Live in maybe, I don't know, a month plus. This is Tiffany Largy, founder of Onwards to Freedom. And what's really crazy about this moment is that I'm really excited to be here. I have spent the last, I don't know, 7 months being pretty sick, and I have spent the last 12 days in having surgery. I had surgery, I was in the hospital. I have been like in a hole a little bit, I think, but I have had a really cool time. Even though I've been sick, even though I've had surgery, I have found myself in a space where, you know, my excitement about my journey has just increased. And more importantly, not only has it increased, but it's really shown me the importance of story. So what I'm going to talk about really quickly is story. And here's what I'm here to say. If you think you have a story, if you have thought you have something to say, if you have journeyed, if you've lived at all, you have something to say. And not only do you have something to say, but you have something to help other people. Now stay with me now. A long time ago, for those of you who know, my story used to be caught up in this really simple fact. I'm from Miami, Florida. I had 2 little girls by the time I was 21, and I really and truly found myself in a space where I didn't think there was a way out. I thought that every day sucked. I often wanted to die, and the reality is that I found myself in a hole in which not only did I think that it wasn't possible for me, but I actually believed that God had forgotten about me, and I became even more angry about that. I made a decision, one simple decision. I decided to stop thinking small. And when I stopped thinking small, my entire game changed. And I went from being this single mom, frustrated, pissed off, angry, upset all the time, literally like all the time, to building a handful of multiple 6-figure businesses and then building a 7-figure business. And they weren't in coaching. They weren't coaching businesses. What's really just near and dear to me is that for so long, I really and truly tried to hide my past. I tried to hide my story. I didn't want people to ever know I had gone to bed hungry. I didn't want people to ever know that I really didn't have my act together. I didn't want people to know that I wasn't awesome. I wanted people to think I was great all the time and that I always had it together and that I was just a single mom and I was never depressed and all of the above. And then one day I made a decision. I had built a 6-figure business, but I couldn't break past that. I made a decision that I was going to own my story. And gosh, I was so afraid of that. You know, I think I was afraid of it for like 100 reasons, but specifically because I was ashamed of my story. Like, I gotta make this clear. I was crazy ashamed of my story. And not only was I ashamed of my story, I was ashamed of what people would think about me. I was ashamed of not feeling adequate. I was ashamed of not feeling enough. And me being ashamed left me, like, me being ashamed of my story, me being ashamed of who I am, me being ashamed of the fact that I was young, single mom. I had no idea where Dad was, couldn't find him. And I just felt like the world was coming to an end every single day. And for me, it's like, what was the game changer? People ask me all the time, and I'd love to tell them that I was like, I read a book, or right place, or right time. But the truth, the absolute hardcore truth, is that I did 2 really specific things. Number 1, I stopped thinking small. And number 2, I decided to embrace my story. And it's like, when you think about your story, like, why does it matter? And why do you have to have a story? You've got to have a story because your story is the only thing that differentiates you in the world. Like, I get so sick of people thinking that they can change their story by wearing really unique clothes or coloring their hair or having the latest shoes or living in a big house or driving that car, the only one made in the country or in the world. And I get it. I understand that all those things are valuable, but let me tell you something. Not only does someone else have the pair of shoes or someone else live in that city or someone else have that clothes, but someone else has it and you're not the only one. The only thing that made me valuable, the only thing that made me unique, and the only thing that made me valuable was my story. And when I think about my story and I think about this concept of like having a story, it's like, not only did I, mind you, I lived in the land of feeling ashamed every single flipping day of my story. I hated it. I hated it. I didn't want to relive it. I wanted it to be far from me. I just wanted it to be something of the past. But I realized that the more I ran from it, the harder it was for me to connect with other people, the harder it was for me to feel connected myself, the harder it was for me to feel whole, the harder it was for me to really just show up as everything I was envisioning in my mind. And one day I made a decision to stop running from the whole thing. And I decided to literally just embrace my story. And not only did I embrace my story, I embraced who I was. I embraced so many parts of things that I tried to leave behind, because I made a decision that not only did I have to embrace my story, but I had to own the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Here are the 3 reasons why you absolutely have to embrace your story. Let me tell you number 1. Number 1, your story is meant to serve other people. It's meant to serve. This was the hardest thing for me to come to terms with. I used to think to myself, oh my gosh, my story is just, do I just tell my story for the sake of it? It's like, no, you know what? I almost gave up on life because of the life that I live. And I'm like, Tiffany Largy, how dare you keep your story to yourself? You know how many people need to hear it? You know how many people need to sit inside of it? You know how many people need to, not only need to hear it, but need to know that it's possible? I was uneducated. I don't have a degree. I'm not certified, not licensed in anything. I am a black woman with 2 small children. I just needed to become a statistic. That's really actually what I was. Another person waiting with no answers and no way out. So for me, it was like I had to learn and understand that my story, and the reason why we got to embrace our story, the whole thing, the good, the bad, and the ugly, is specifically because it is meant to serve other people, because there are other people on the journey far away from where you are today, but they're looking around thinking to themselves, oh my gosh, it's not possible. And your story is literally like, it's almost like casting a net or casting a fishing line. It's like casting something and you're like, this possible. It's not only possible, but if it's possible for me, it's possible for you too. That is the number 1 reason why you have to own your story. The second reason why you gotta own your story is because it's who you are. I spent so many years trying to change who I was, especially when I moved to a state where there were people who didn't like the way I dressed. They didn't like the fact that I was a little bit loud. They didn't like the fact that I was rough or off the cuff. Everybody had an opinion on how I should be and what I should look like and how I should feel and how I should dress. And man, I can't even begin to tell you the amount of times people told me, oh, well, corporate women don't dress like that. Corporate women have suits on. And I was like, well, I don't like suits. Corporate women wear heels that are closed toes. And I was like, I don't like those either. Corporate women do not wear hoop earrings. And I was like, I don't like button earrings. They don't look good on me. I'm from Miami. But I can't even begin to tell you the amount of people who used to try to curtail who I was, the way I talked, the way I approached people, the way I walked into the market. And you know, at some point along my journey, especially when I was only making 6 figures, before I got to 7 figures, I remember trying to make attempts to please other people. I remember really trying to dress differently. I even went into these BS stores that I hated and I tried to buy what these women were wearing, and I was like, you know what? I actually can't do this thing anymore. The only person I know how to be is me. That's it. The only thing I can completely understand is myself. And because the only thing I could understand was myself, it was the only thing I needed to be. And what I learned the long way, the flipping long way, is that the best person I could be was me. Because there was only one Tiffany Largy. And it's like I had to own and understand that God created me for a reason, and He created me how He created me, and I just was what I was, and that was it. And that my number 1 goal should not be to change. My number 1 goal should be to be the best version of myself. That was it. To be the best version of myself. That is totally it. Second reason why you got to tell your story. The third reason. Your story allows you to track growth. When you're able to when people try to hide from their story, you know what happens? They tend to relive parts of it that they're trying to escape from, or they spend so much time trying to run from it that they're not growing. They're hovering in a cycle. And in order for me to really see where am I now compared from where I came from, or what I used to be, or things that weren't working for me, it's crazy important for me to know the whole of my story. So that way, not only can I measure my growth, but I know the process on how to grow. Because the people that we're meant to serve need a process to follow. And if you don't have a process to follow, if you don't know how you've grown, you cannot effectively help other people. You can't. This is what drives me crazy when I see coaches out there, and this is not to badmouth any specific coach, but I see people out there who are just giving and selling to people, and they're selling a story and parts and pieces of it, and it's like, no, you can't serve people like that, because they need the whole thing, because they're so scared. I was so scared. I was so scared the majority of the time. I was afraid to take one step, let alone 15. You know, like, if you don't give the people that you're meant to serve a step, like each step, then you know what's going to happen? They're going to make a step, and they see blackness in front of them, and they're like, I don't know that I can go any further. And you're going to trap people, and you're going to be part of the process of keeping the people who you're meant to serve stuck in where they are. Because it's really simple. You have no idea how to get from here to there. And you really can't help them. And all those people who you're meant to serve are going to miss out. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're not living a life of serving, I'm like, well, then what are you doing in life? Like, I may not be the expert, but I don't know what you're doing in life. If you live in a life and your life is not committed to serving in some capacity, then I'm like, thumbs down. I really don't know what you're doing. If you're living a life where you're like serving, like, you know, numero uno over here, where, you know, kudos to you, good for you. I just don't believe that's how God made it for me. I think at some point, you get to a point, I think everybody has a responsibility to turn around and help somebody in some capacity, in any way that they can. It doesn't have to be a grand way. I'm not telling everybody to create another Tom's Shoes. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that it is imperative that you literally, as soon as you get somewhere, you got to turn around and help other people. And the next thing is you can't always charge them. You can't charge everybody, because half the people that you're meant to serve don't have the money, which means in some capacity you have to be committed to the process. If you're really out there saying you want to help people and you're here to change the course of X, man, you have to have a way for people to engage and get served in some capacity that doesn't require money. Because I'm going to tell you, 14 years ago, not only did I not have money, but putting my kids to bed hungry, you couldn't have asked me for $30. You couldn't have asked me for it, because I was still trying to figure out how to get bread and water. And for me, if I was still trying to figure out how to get bread and water, and someone came around, and the only way for me to take, I didn't need to grow 100 hours. I just needed to grow 5 minutes from where I was standing. Man, I would have been like, you have no idea what would have happened for me. How much faster or much further I'd be on the journey I was today if I had access. And I'm not talking about free resources in my community. I'm talking about people who have the know-how, the experience, the knowledge, the expertise, and the capacity to just give me a little bit of information. And I'm not talking about so that way they can later sell you into something. I really and truly mean serving to serve, serving to give, because people that give grow. And my gosh, if you really want to grow, like if you're in your business, if you're in your life and you're saying, I don't know where to go, I don't know how to go, here it is, baby. I'm gonna spell it out for you, because that's literally how this is going down. Tell your story. You want to figure out, like, how do you, and listen, if you're saying, Tiffany, I don't even know if I have a story, literally, I mean this. Come find me. Send me a message, send someone on my team a message, come to onwardstofreedom.com and post it there. I will totally help you figure out what your story is. Tell your story. Why? 1, because you're meant to serve. 2, because it's who you are. Can't run from who you are. You can only do that crap for so long before you got to embrace yourself and be done with it. Number 3, because you got to track your growth. Because you cannot help other people if you don't track your growth. It is just that simple. I love you to pieces. I'll see you soon. Bye.